European integration has improved our lives in a very tangible way. Free movement, safer food, a better protected environment, and a level playing field for companies coming from all over the world. Yet, for many reasons, Europe today is not perceived nor is presented as an opportunity. How can we explain this paradox? We have asked this question to some people who chose Europe as their home. These are people who live the European dream. Being them exposed to the European paradox in their daily life, we have asked a further question: how can Europe better reach out and communicate on its work? Unfortunately, too little is known about the European Union, both inside and outside of the continent, and this often leads to misunderstandings about what Europe really is today. This in turn means missed opportunities for many people who don't really grasp the potential of a European life. While in a short video we cannot highlight all the opportunities and clarify all the misunderstandings, each of our guests seems to have at least one idea to improve our collective and individual understanding of Europe. Let's now turn to them.
I think that one of the reasons that people are a little bit sceptical of Europe is precisely because they don't quite understand what's going on.
We are living in a globalized world. We're having an internal market. People take these things for granted but don't understand the challenges that come with it.
I think one of the main reasons is the EU is just not good enough at promoting itself. It doesn't market its achievements sufficiently well.
Dès le point de départ, l'Europe n'a pas été conçue comme une Europe des citoyens, c'est une Europe des États. Ce sont des États qui ont décidé de travailler entre eux.
I think at the same time citizens, or they feel, they're probably not sufficiently involved in the entire decision-making process within the EU. So on the one hand, the EU laws have a huge impact on their life, but on the other hand, they're not having a sufficient good impact, or rather, input into the decision making.
So that's what we've not really achieved. The European Union remains a kind of a technocratic project, but it's not a project which the citizens feel they have any control over.
The education system does not always provide the right basis to children and to young people. There are some very good efforts locally. In certain schools you have excellent teaching on European affairs. In other places it's largely not there.
It's too complex, and the European Union, I believe, is taking too much responsibilities on everything. Actually, the EU, if you think about it, is today doing a little bit of everything, and it's too complex.
The good issues that are being achieved at EU level are rarely properly communicated, so EU bashing becomes popular because it's also simpler than trying to understand the challenges and what is needed to address them.
I think on the one hand the EU is not doing enough to really promote itself, and on the other hand it's receiving a lot of negative press simply because I think that just sells more.
I believe that time heals many things and that we accept institutions that we feel comfortable with. Many of the institutions we feel comfortable with are old. The European Union is young and it sits across the institutions we grew up knowing. Even if we're relatively young, we know more about our member states and our local town hall than we do about these things in Brussels and Strasbourg and Luxembourg. So novelty is the main problem and distance is the other.
Tant que l'Europe fonctionnera sur les bases actuelles, je ne vois pas comment l'Europe pourrait être aimée. Il faut sortir de cette technocratie européenne qui sert beaucoup les États et passer au stade de la démocratie européenne.
It's not really just a question of communication by Europe, it's a question of changing behavior. I think the first step is not just a public relations exercise in communication, but the first step really is to begin complying at the European level with its own laws, which are quite good, and then communicate about that. I think you would see a very big difference.
I think the first task is for the European workers themselves. There is about 60,000 people working for the European Union, and each of them had really a duty, a moral duty to communicate about its work.
If we want to communicate well about Europe, what we should do is focus on a few little things that really make a difference to the citizens
I think the basic good political communication comes from politicians themselves that communicate in a compelling way. Individual people who've got an interesting story to tell can connect European Union politics back down to the practicalities of people's everyday lives. So that's the way that I'd like to see things go. Help those individual people to communicate rather than communicating as institutions.
I don't think it would be unreasonable for the EU to outsource to a communications company. I think it needs a dynamic. It needs input from real professionals. We need experts in the field that know how to sell the EU to its citizens.